But then, man, just out of curiosity, in Brazil, your contact with guitar and acoustic guitar was more about chords. You knew those more sophisticated bossa nova chords and everything, but you didn't connect that with improvisation. It was more about the right hand, the chords, that kind of thing.
From the beginning, I've always been fascinated by chords. Like when I saw someone playing the guitar, if the guy played a chord I didn't know, I would go there and ask what chord that was. I like to watch the guitarists who played different things.
Like who, for example?
Oh no, just local people. My city, no one famous.
I got it. I got it. All right, man, let's go. When you got to Berklee, you started in 2004, right? You mentioned it, right?
Yes.
You ended up doing 2.5 years, right? Because you transferred credits, right?
I transferred credits. 2 years at the first college, and then I completed another 2.5 years to graduate.
Okay. When you got to Berklee, man. Yeah. I think I met you in 2005, more or less. And you were already involved there with Hope. Spounding, did you meet her there at college? Because I remember she was a teacher there, super young, right? But she hadn't blown up yet at that time, right? Because when she blew up really fast, right? Because she really is a phenomenon, right, man? She's a phenomenon. Tell me a bit about how it was, yeah, that arrival there. How did you guys meet and why did you start making music together?
Man, I met Esperanza right in the first few weeks. I already knew who she was because Berklee had on their website, there were always some standout students featured on the homepage like that. And while researching there, I saw Esperanza. I heard her sound there.
Was she still a student?
I think she was a student at that time, yeah. So I already knew who she was. So right in the first few weeks, I was walking down a hallway. She came up and I stopped and I introduced myself.
Oh, that's cool, man.
And she was super nice right away. I think she invited me to her house because there was going to be a dinner, a gathering at her place. So I went there and we became friends.
Did you guys make any music that day or not?
Yeah, we did. We did. We made music that day and then we invited her. Because we played there in Boston. Boston has a lot of Brazilians, right? And there are Brazilian restaurants. We had a weekly gig there at a barbecue restaurant.
It was you and who?
Me and Tiago Amorim.
Who plays the keyboard, right?
Who plays the keyboard? Great musician, a great friend of mine, owner of Vivo, Rio, here in Rio de Janeiro. And she's a very special and important person in my life. Tiago Amorim, he was the one who introduced me to Esperanza, I can say that. Because when I arrived at Berklee, I quickly met Tiago. And he was the one who told me about Esperanza. I already knew who she was from the website, but he gave me his description. He said, no, man, I know Esperanza, and here's the thing. He's a phenomenon and all. He already gave a... And then we invited her to play with us at the barbecue restaurant. And she would come there all the time. She loved coming there and playing.
Did she come just to sing, or did she play bass too?
She brought the bass.
Big acoustic, right?
She brought that huge acoustic bass. Acoustic. And people always praise the girl with the cello guitar a lot.
And it's funny, this thing about the acoustic bass, man, because here in Brazil, we don't see that. But there in Boston, you're on the subway, and there are people with acoustic basses on the subway, dude. That big thing over there, and it's all good. It has a wheel underneath, so people can roll it down the street with a wheel. It's an instrument. It's really a big thing, right, man?
It's a big thing. I think that in Boston, to carry it on the train or on the bus, that's actually pretty chill. Now, just imagine traveling the world. Imagine doing a show there in the Canary Islands.
Does she bring her bass?
Most of the time, yeah, right. Her and most basses, right?
It's because there's a special hard case, like a boat, right? Isn't that right? Have you seen this? You know what I mean? You're always in the know, right? It's like a little boat, a ship, you know? She said it meant. Yeah. Because to take it on a plane, it's an expensive, fragile instrument, right? So, yeah, it has to be a hard case, and it must cost a fortune to transport that thing, right, man?
No, but there have been several occasions where either you rent a bass or borrow one from some bassist in the city, right? Sometimes that happens. And there are also models like this guitar here that are practical. There's an acoustic bass, which is smaller. Some you can even assemble singing and stuff. And sometimes she had about 2 basses like that, which were smaller. One was from David Gage, which is a bass it's It's a regular bass, it just doesn't have the big belly underneath. It comes up to the middle and it ends right there in the middle, like that. Ah, I get it. I get it. I get it. There's this one, and if I'm not mistaken, she had another one that was smaller, which Mark Johnson, Elias's husband, also played. I forgot the brand now, but there are alternatives for those who can't carry that trombone.
I get it, but obviously she preferred to take the trombone.
Sure, right, of course.
But then it's logistics, right? But anyway, so it was, you guys started to get closer because of this gig, and
Yeah, from that gig, from the school, from the music itself was the music.
I don't know, the friendship started there. Because I remember you guys playing in that college environment. I also remember that thing you guys were doing there. But I think her thing, what happened was kind of sudden. It was on David Letterman, right?
Yeah, that was the guy's name.
Is that it?
Yeah, David Letterman.
That was indeed really a turning point.
I think so, because at that particular show, at the beginning of the show, when David Letterman is introducing the guests in the band, when he talked about the band, Paul Schaefer, who's that bald keyboardist, when we did the sound check, in the show he was really impressed with the band, and David Letterman doesn't participate in the sound check. So he was really excited, saying, wow, that's cool, there's the band and stuff. And then during the show, Vera, really, at the beginning of the show, when David Letterman introduced, he interrupted David Letterman and said, I just want to interrupt here to say that this band is the best band that has ever played here in the history of the show. Then David was like, okay, let's see then. And then, at the end of our performance, which is right at the end of the show, he got on stage and said, this is the coolest person who has ever played on our show. Speaking of hope like that. And that phrase had a huge, very positive impact in the United States. After that, all the shows we did were packed. And whenever we had a show or something, or the interview she gave on other TV programs, that was the topic, Wow, David Letterman said, you're the coolest person who has ever been on his show. Can you believe that?
Yeah, it really made an impact, right, man? What year was that? 2008. 2008. So, I said it was really an explosion. It's that thing, right, man? You guys were ready, right? As a band, and her as a singer, right, man? It really is like that. It's a phenomenon because she improvises like crazy on that bass and has an amazing voice, right? And she's super open when it comes to her repertoire, a lot of Brazilian music, right? She's really, really eclectic. Really eclectic, right, man? And then I go back a bit more to Berklee, but just to wrap up this topic. Hope. Not to wrap up the topic because you guys were together for a long time, right? But to get ourselves organized here. You went out on tour with her. From that moment on, it was on. And this year, man, it was already a packed schedule, crazy. Yeah, from the beginning.
A packed schedule, like not being able to breathe, Spending very little time at home. It was like this. I was always on the run,
And the show, a repertoire of how many songs, more or less, 15, 20 songs, a show lasting an hour and a half, right?
So an hour and a half was the contract, but it always went over 2 hours.
The hope. I never wanted to stop. And so, man, we were talking about this because it's a hell of a gig, right? Because you're playing with amazing musicians, a kind of sound that every musician loves to play, right? Because sometimes you're playing a wonderful gig in terms of setup, money, and everything, but sometimes it's kind of monotonous. You spend 3 years, 2 years playing the same thing. I imagine that there, man, you had a freedom to improvise even though it was a set repertoire, right? Yeah, it was essential.
We played differently like that. Esperanza always wanted to be surprised. Yeah, to be surprised and to surprise as well. So many times we didn't know what was going to happen, like on stage. For example, when we played for Barack Obama, at the Nobel Peace Prize, which was a live show broadcasted to over 90 countries, the ceremony, and we played that song, I Know You Know, which is super famous of hers. Is this song her composition? Yeah, it's her composition. And So, for example, that version we played there, it's completely different from the others. It was super improvised. And I think it's a lot of courage on her part, to get on that stage full of cameras, live. Obama right there in front, Will Smith introducing us. And she take the music to another level. I remember she started singing really softly, then the drummer brought it down, and we were just feeling it, and before we knew it, she was back to the chorus. We didn't know where she was going, so we just went along with her. In other words, not even with the pressure of all those cameras, not even there. She wanted it to be prearranged or rehearsed.
Did you guys play that song?
We played 2 songs in that show.
And man, in terms of your confidence at that moment. So in 2000, were you super confident, or at the beginning, did you have a certain level of nervousness about being part of this work? What about her?
No, man, I get nervous just talking about it now. I was always pretty nervous, Even though I told her that I didn't get nervous. She asked me that before our first show. She asked, "Do you get nervous? Do you get nervous?" And I said, "No." But I was lying, right? No, I was always nervous. No, but after a while, man, I can already imagine that, I don't know, by the second year, you were already a different person. Ricardo, right, man. How much I've evolved musically, like, wow, I can't even explain it, The other musicians in the band always commented to me that I've evolved a lot in the band because I was a lot. How do you say it? Fresh, right? True, cool. That's right. I was going to say fresh, but that word doesn't sound very good. I was really raw. That's right. So I was there cooking in a slow double boiler, but I was cooking, and learning because the musicians were really amazing, right? They were on a level way above mine. Leo Genovese, Otis Brown, and Esperanza, right? So I was the baby of the band. Not just in age, I was the youngest of them, but also musically.
But the best place for you to be is a place like this, right? For sure, man. Leo Genovese, man, I remember an album he recorded with Hal Crook. Do you remember? He's playing a lot. I even transcribed a part of one of his solos there.
Wow, you did it.
No, it's because I even used, man, some stuff he used that I loved, which was him doing a solo with chordal harmony, where one hand played some chordal blocks and the right hand in another region. So it created this really cool rhythmic thing.
He's the McCoy Tyner of the future, right? He managed to modernize McCoy Tyner's sound. And that's just one characteristic. Leo, he has Chick Corea in him. He has Herbie Hancock. He has Keith Jarrett. He has McCoy Tyner. He has Bud Powell. Leo is one of the guys who studied the most music that I know, like him and Esperanza too. Man, these guys studied so much, We talked before and I said I studied a lot, but when I remember how much they study, my a lot is really very little.
And Leo Genovese is from Argentina, right?
Yeah, he's Argentine.
He's been in the U.S. ever since, never came back.